and welcome to what is sure to be a free-form flowing of disjointed flowers thoughts with you and me and all of our friends gathered at the gazebo around the flower bed. How's it going? This is probably going to be a bit rambly. It's gonna be mostly off the cuff, and it's probably gonna go every which way, but I do have some things compartmentalized a bit in my brain, sort of into sections of how I want to go about this. I just kind of wanted to do a bit of a capper video. I wanted to put some final thoughts out there on my playthrough of the Flowers visual novel series. So it goes without saying that if you've not played those yourself or watched the video series, you're probably not going to do you a lot of good to be here. And if you plan on reading it, this is not where you want to be, because we're going to just, the spoilers are gonna be a flying. That's how the kids talk these days, or so I'm told. But this is going to be a little off the cuff video. It's going to be almost kind of like a solo podcast, I guess. I've never really done this, but I guess if you've, spent 80 hours reading a visual novel to mostly yourself, then this probably shouldn't be too weird. But flowers. It was quite the journey, and it's definitely one I won't soon forget. It's absolutely one of the most pleasant gaming experiences that I've had all year, and there's just so much to say about it. I do want to say up front that this video is in no way exhaustive. It's just a way for me to kind of put a cap on the series for now and put my feelings and thoughts somewhere in just one little video in babbling bobblehead form. Again, it'll probably be all over the place, but hopefully it'll make some sense, or I'll say something anybody wants to hear by the end of it, or or at least it'll be entertaining enough to listen to for however long it goes on. There's just so many layers to this story, and themes that wrap around on themselves and other themes, and so many interesting ties to literature and movies and media and commentary on the Yuri genre itself, that it's a story that's going to occupy a decent chunk of my brain for a long time. Kind of like 2236 AD did last year, where it was just, well, that's all I'm going to be thinking about for the rest of the year. And whatever ends up in this video is probably going to be a fraction of the thoughts that I have about it. So if you want to discuss the stuff in depth at all, with a group of people that are, at the ready, willing, and able to definitely converse with you on that level, I would suggest doing yourself a favor and looking up the Flowers Discord. It has been an invaluable resource and a pretty welcoming place for my own thoughts throughout the last 9 months of me being on this journey. So I guess with that, we'll kind of run over some general thoughts on the story as a whole. Obviously, I loved the hell out of it. It was pretty great, start to finish, even with the blemishes, of which there really aren't a lot. For an 80-hour story, one which I do have complaints about, I'm shocked at how little I think they dropped the ball. And they never really dropped the ball in ways I felt that were detrimental to any four of the single pieces that make up this story. I don't think that, despite the fact that maybe there's a problem or two that I might see in the first or fourth volume, I don't think that the problems are in any way anything that drag the work down, even on the individual game level. I think the only thing that really sticks out to me as a universal complaint is something that I talked about a lot throughout playing. If you watched my videos at all, it was visual novel bullshit, and that is basically the weird ways that routes and endings are reached in visual novels and the way choices have to be made, and Flowers very specifically railroads you into most of its endings. Like, you usually have to do them in one specific order for each game, and I think that sometimes messes with the pacing of the story, or it messes with kind of like the way I feel at the end of a story, because sometimes I want to do the true ending last, because that's what I do. That's how I play visual novels, is I always do the true ending last. But this is not a series where you can do that, because you often have to get the true ending to unlock something else, and then and every game has its own weirdness about that. And I think Hiver was the one that kind of bothered me the most with that, where I still have no idea how you would ever know how to go back and pick up the grand finale, or to know to do that without a guide. I just do not know, and it's literally the end of the story, and it feels like it's tucked away behind a weird thing. But thankfully there are guides that exist, though, and after I played through the first game, for games 2, 3, and 4, I absolutely used guides for the playthroughs, because I wanted to make sure that I got everything and all of that. But I think that's really just the largest complaint I have for the series as a whole. The only thing that I can think of that really kind of was a little bit of a sore spot throughout the whole thing. But it's nothing that makes me really dislike the series at all. So I guess with that out of the way, from here forward, I guess I'm going to try to do some abridged thoughts on each volume, hence why we've got all 4 volumes here generously set up behind me, so I can do cool stuff like this. Look at that. Okay, now we're gonna talk about Le Volume Serpentin, which I went into this not knowing what to expect. I am not a person who generally likes overly sugary, sweet, and saccharine Yuri. I don't like idealized kind of stories, and a lot of Yuri material kind of just hits me that way, where it just kind of feels a little too idealized for me, a little too the purest form of love kind of lens, and that's always been a lens that's kind of squicked me out a little bit. But this series came highly recommended to me from somebody that I no longer talk to, because we are no longer dating. So that was absolutely weird going into the first volume, literally probably like, gosh, now I'm trying to think about it. Like, when I actually finished it, I think like I called it quits. I think maybe it was either a week before or a week after I started reading Paton. But either way, that is neither here nor there. But upon loading up this game for the first time, it just smacks you in the face. It's like, oh yeah, this is a Yuri-ass visual novel. There's flowers, pretty flowers. There's a lily meter, for crying out loud. The text box and everything's all white and flowery. Everything's bright and vivid and beautiful, and it just immediately reads Yuri visual novel in this kind of in a way that I think maybe it's setting up those expectations on purpose. Like, I very immediately drew comparisons in my brain to Maria Sama Gamiteru, and that was something that was heavily advertised to me when I was getting into anime. It was like the thing that was on the cover of a lot of magazines and catalogs, print catalogs for anime that you would receive at the time. So that's kind of what I was expecting going into this, and like right off the bat, I think you get a protagonist. When you're introduced to Suo Shirahane, who is one of the more interesting visual novel protagonists I think I've ever gotten to reside inside the head of. She is a very interesting piece of work, because I feel like she is like almost the last person people want as their protagonist. I feel like a lot of the criticism that I do read of this first volume is people really not liking Suo as a protagonist, because she is so demure. She is so withdrawn. She is so alienated and solitary. She is. I've even seen her be referred to as self-centered, and I think that, like, I think you can make the argument that she is self-centered, but that's because she's literally only had herself and her own mind to play around in for so long. That being in these social environments for the first time is very, very, it's the only way that she can look at it. It's the only lens that she can look at it. And like, how does this affect me? And I found, like, she's an absolute lesbian train wreck disaster from the get-go, and I loved her for it. She in no way as a protagonist put me off. In fact, I really felt that, and maybe this is just me showing my own ignorance and not reading a lot of other Yuri media, but she strikes me as very non-traditional in terms of a visual novel protagonist. She's just very understated. She is very go with the flow and just absolutely, like, I don't know that I have ever I don't know that I've ever witnessed a character whose voice acting is so low in the mix that I know I probably cut off her speaking, you know, lines while reading. I know I probably cut her off hundreds of times, much to the annoyance of everybody else. But I think Suo is a fantastic protagonist. Like, she's somebody that I really like. Throughout all of this first volume, it's very easy to get behind her, I think. And I think that if you don't see that growth in her character, it's again, it's not a lot. She doesn't start completely blowing up into the person that she is going to be by the end of this game for a while. The progress she makes in this game is you could look at it in the grand scheme of things and say it's very minimal, but it's very important growth that she sees in this first game, in learning to connect to people, in like having all of these social experiences. And I was there. Like, you can go back and watch the videos. Every time she had a little victory, like, I just my just filled my heart with joy, because you could see that those little things were changing her. And I think they just did such a good job of creating this character that is so out of the ordinary, but I didn't find her in the least bit off-putting in the way I think a lot of people do. I think she's just a very genuine, absolutely loving person. Like, good Lord, the moment in the library with Mayuri when Mayuri like confesses that, like, yeah, I like girls, and so it was just like, yeah, but like, what's wrong with that? You love who you love, and she's just so pure of heart. That it's almost sickening at times how pure of heart she is. But I like her a lot. And of course we get more character introductions. These kind of come with, you know, obviously Mayuri and Rika, and those personalities are very interesting. Like, Mayuri is really hard to read for a while. In the first game, I think I wasn't really sure what we were doing with her, and then like the kind of the twist, and that she was kind of like more into Rika because of her connection to the person that she came to the school to get away from. Like, that was also a shock, because now it's like I didn't expect Suo to be the one on, you know, the outside of that little triangle for a while. I didn't expect that at all. And then Rika, oh my God, Rika is, there's so much going on with her in this game, and I think that I think she is a character that even I'm guilty. A lot of people come out of this first game really not liking her, and I'm guilty. I went into that second game like, well, how you gonna pull this off? How you gonna make me like her? And I mean, obviously, spoilers. I did by the end. I absolutely love Rika by the end. But she does some things in this volume that are maybe not admirable, but it all with everybody that makes a choice in this game to do something that's kind of shitty, I think that we've got to understand that, one, we're dealing with children, and that there's no manual on how these kids are supposed to be dealing with the very big feelings they're having. And I think that's something you kind of find in a lot of like media criticism. I think is a lack of empathy for characters who are supposed to be children. Like I am a big Hope defender from Final Fantasy 13, who is a child who has been labeled an enemy of the world and literally saw his mom die in front of him. He saw her get dropped off a bridge, and people are like, he's so whiny. Why does he want to kill the guy he thinks killed his mom? And it's just like, y'all, please. Like, I don't even like kids, but I can understand in stories when I'm supposed to be empathetic a little bit. Who else we got? The Sasaki twins. Like, when they get introduced, I think it's real easy, like, to just kind of pin them down. Oh, look, it's the comedy act. Here are the comedy act, the characters that are going to be around to lift everybody up and make fun jokes and probably be a little annoying, which they do a lot of in the first volume. Like, they're kind of not really mean-spirited. It's just they're acting out because they don't know how to just say, I want to be friends. And again, you boil that down to just kids being kids. And I think that it all really makes sense. Then we get to like the various mysteries throughout this chapter, and this is a thing that runs through the whole series, is there are mysteries all over the place, and you solve them. And I think that this first volume has like the worst set of mysteries, because some of them I'm not gonna sit here and try to argue with anybody about it, but I think some of the mysteries in this first game are just kind of dumb. I don't know how I'm expected to know. I know that it's obvious that, hey, they're multiple choice answers and you can just make some leaps in logic. But I think some of the things that they wanted you to kind of know were a bit silly. Moving on to some other characters, though. Erica, like, speaking of mysteries, very first mystery leads back to her, and we get to guess her name. It was just a very fun game that we all got to play together. Erica was just immediately like, oh, you are like absolutely best girl, aren't you? Yep. Yeah, okay, you're the ride or die for the rest of the series. And I think that holds true. Like, Erica is just such an amazing character, and maybe like the most fully realized character of the series, maybe. I think just the way she kind of comes into her own and stays a very significant part of the story. And with as often as they keep putting her on screen, they know where their value is, I think. Of course, we've got Yuzuriha and Nerine, who don't play a huge role in this first game, though, you know, Yuzuriha gets bonked on the head for wild reasons we find out later. But they're kind of like, they too kind of come off as a comedy duo in this first game, which that's fine. Like, I think that they've really kind of got, like, this is a story that has a lot to do, and I understand why you can't cram something big and important in for everybody. So you've kind of got to give some characters a few bit parts, and it's understandable. You know, you got 3 more games left. You need to kind of do some setup. But along with the mysteries, though, I thought were bad. I think that there were moments where this one can feel like, not only is it dragging at times, but there are times where I feel that they make characters act in ways that feels really contrived. Like the whole one of the Sasaki sisters disappearing things. My brain still won't let go of that as kind of being dumb. I still don't know how at any point no adult was told, hey, there's a child missing. If you really thought one of them was missing. And again, I think that has a really good bow put on it. Like, I think that they wrapped that up really well. But I think these characters end up acting weird and irresponsible and made to kind of like made to be a little dumbed down in ways that didn't really fit how I felt they were being written beforehand. And I guess that's like really my biggest gripe with Patrol. The Mayuri disappearance in the end, I did not see coming. I was blindsided. Like, I was literally angry. Like, you cannot take this away from me, and they straight up did. I was so butt mad. I like, and it really is just the moment that solidified me. Oh, this is literally going to be the Trails in the Sky of Yuri visual novels, isn't it? It was. It was absolutely bonkers. The way they pulled that off, it's such a similar feeling to how I came out of that first Trails in the Sky game, and they did an amazing job. I was just immediately already wanted to like dive into the second game, but I think it does a lot of good to take a moment between each of these games and reflect a little bit, because there's so many little nuances that we're not going over here. Like I said, I'm kind of broad strokesing this as much as I can, because if I tried to sit here and talk about everything that I noticed after the fact, I would, one, be kind of maybe ruining some of the parts of the story that maybe others haven't discovered yet, and maybe that's, you know, a part of their own discovery with the series. But two, this video would be 19 hours long. And I don't have that kind of vocal endurance. But I came out of this first game really, really shocked at how well this was put together, how well it was written, like the prose, how well the dialogue was written, like, and even when it kind of stumbled a bit on its pacing and kind of dragged its feet a little bit, I was still a really big fan of everything that it was doing, and just I think it's a great start to the series. I get why some people may not be the biggest fan of it, and why it's probably even up until recently, it was like my least favorite. Now I just kind of like have 2 volumes that are at the top, and then 2 volumes that are just like right under that. They're just, you know, if you scooched them up a pixel, they would all be the #1 spot. And now the first volume kind of just sits in that second row, 1 pixel below, you know, whatever the other 2 are. So I guess that'll kind of wrap up final thoughts on Patrol, so we can move on to le volume été, which this is the one I was most excited about coming out of the first volume, because immediately they're like, hey, guess what? Erika's the protagonist next time. And I came into this series not actually knowing that we were going to be changing protagonists nearly every game. So that was exciting. And to be in the head of somebody like this was just an absolute delight. She is a character that is so immediately interesting in the first game that you just want her around all the time and want to know more about her, and this is just an amazingly put together, like if the first of all, like I look at all 4 of these games, and like each one is has a focus on a very specific thing. The first game, while I think a lot of people would look at it as a romance, I think that first game is more of just kind of a fish out of water story. It's an awkward teenager kind of learning to socialize for the first time story. I think that Ete is actually the big romance of the series. And people can come with me, people can come at me with their knives if they want. But I think that from the jump, you know, you literally start this game and you are introduced to 2 characters who are going to be falling in love. They don't even hide it. This is the thing they spoil right up front. The gravitas that this game has to spoil that right up front, but also have the confidence to just be like, yeah, and you're going to sit here and be interested the whole friggin' time. And they not wrong at all. And that's really like where you are, that Erika and Chidori are immediately on a crash course to fall in love with one another, despite being as compatible as gasoline in a lit match. But maybe that's like the perfect type of compatible to be. Maybe like being that volatile is actually really, really good. This is a story that is kind of just like an honest romance through and through, with two characters that just, they need to step outside of their self-imposed isolations to connect with other people. And the interesting thing I find here is that the initial impetus for Erika's change is wanting to connect with Suo to try and help her. And we get that like when she kind of like sees her moping in the library watching the metronome, and like you get the feeling that she just kind of feels like unable to know what to do in this situation. And I think that this really like makes Suo like the center of Erika and Chidori starting to become closer, especially after the first mystery of the game, when Chidori hid the truth of what happened to the bunnies so as to not hurt Suo's feelings again, because she had been very insensitive about the whole Mayuri disappearing situation earlier, and not in a malicious manner. It's just Chidori's a very honest, forthright, very to the point kind of person, and she can't have that context for why this is such a touchy subject. And of course she realized, you know, through Erika's continued pointing it out, like, hey, listen, you hurt her, okay? Like, this, you don't bring this up because it sucks and it hurts. And Chidori kind of taking it on herself to hide the truth of the bunnies so that Suo wouldn't get hurt. Like, that action, I think, softened Erika's view on Chidori and made her more curious. Like, because I'm pretty sure that's very obvious that these two just, there is just an immediate do not like you. Do not like you. Don't want to know anything about you. And I think that seeing that selfless act of where, oh, like, wait, like, this girl can care about people. Okay, that's weirdly intriguing. And I think that for Chidori, she got to feel firsthand what it felt like to do something to help somebody, to protect somebody. We know what we know about her past now after the game, and like, you know, the way that she had sort of kind of been shunted through the entertainment industry, and how she'd kind of not really been like super selfish, but yeah, I guess it is super selfish. She'd kind of been really super selfish, and it ended up getting somebody hurt, and she does that again. It's a mistake that she needs to overcome, and I think through this incident, I think they both kind of learned a lot about one another through that, and that's really the, like, Suo is literally the impetus for these two ending up being in their little romantic relationship. You have to pardon me a moment. I'm also taking a moment to drink, and I'm not editing this in any way. I'm not editing this in any way other than to put some music behind the commentary, because I don't know who wants to sit here and listen to my dumb voice blabbering at them. Like, we're not even halfway through this yet. But I mean, from there, Ete is just a really bumpy and complicated and emotional romance. These are two characters that are like scared to like pull the walls down because they're afraid it'll fundamentally change them to the point of not recognizing themselves. But in reality, the changes that they make, and even the fights they have, which, ooh, they have some pretty nasty fights. I really didn't expect them to be at especially late in the story, to kind of end up in that last fight that they end up in, when you kind of feel like they're making inroads and, you know, having that little boat adventure and things like that. You kind of just don't see that coming again, and it takes that one final blow up for things to kind of like really settle in them, to kind of find to really kind of find each other, like stumbling through the dark in a way. And all of that just kind of like drags them closer to one another and opens them up to other friendships and relationships blossoming around them. Like you actually hear in Chidori's voice actress, she actually softens her tone over the course of this game. Like you can actually hear her kind of like, she starts out speaking to people in a very mechanical, a very enunciated fashion, and as she gets closer to people and as she starts letting that guard down a bit, she starts to kind of have a softer approach to how she talks to people. And that's something that carries throughout like the rest of the series, is that she actually just continues growing in that direction. But neither character, in like letting those walls down, neither character ever feels like they sacrifice who they are to do that. They just enrich their lives in doing so, in letting other people in to kind of like let their ideas and values start to color their world a little bit. And that is especially true of one another. Of course, the other big love story here is of course our precious little Erika has caught in herself some feelings for Miss Dahlia Basquiat. It's very understandable. Dahlia Basquiat is, one, a very ample woman with fantastic assets, and two, she's just been very sweet and accommodating, and she's helped Erika ever since she arrived. And even in the Dahlia end, despite the fact that obviously I wouldn't want them to end up together, given, you know, all of that. I was very happy with how that whole thing shook out. Like, Erika had already felt like she owed Dahlia so much, and by the end of this chapter, she has to feel just so completely and eternally indebted for everything she's received from Dahlia, and that includes being paired up with her amitié, who she ends up falling in love with. Like Dahlia read these characters like a book. She read these girls like a book, and she knew that they, like I think Dahlia is a very good people person. She can look at people and know just instinctively what would be good for them, and she knew that these two would probably clash. But she also knew that each one had something the other needed. And I think that by the end of this chapter, Erika just feels so indebted to Dahlia, and it's something she won't get to pay back for a while, but I think that you can tell it's something that weighs on her even through her happiness, you know, that she finds in this volume. But all in all, like pound for pound, I don't think they could have written a better romance. Like, I just think top to bottom, this is a very good love story that's told very well. It just succeeds at everything it does. And even like outside of the context of the whole of the Flowers experience, I think that this is just a really well-told love story. You know, not just like a well-told love story for a game or a well-told love story for a visual novel. It's not, there's no qualifier there. It's just a really good love story. So if you like take out the parts that are about Mayuri missing and all of this stuff, you just have at the center of all that a really good love story between two characters that are exactly what each other need. And watching their relationship blossom throughout the rest of the series, and just how absolutely in love they are, and how they show it, and how they barb with one another. Some of the most brutal barbs I've ever, I think some of them just completely caught me off guard. Like, when they're looking for Narine's diary in the next game, we're jumping ahead a little bit, but it's to make a point about how great a relationship these two have. You know, they're looking around and Chidori can't find it, and Erika's like, come on, use your head. And Chidori just fires back, well, come on, use your legs. And that just stopped me in my tracks. I was dead. I was just dead. I was just dead. I had no response for that. That's just that is peak relationship goals. Get you a girl that you can absolutely dumpster like that and still love you and still love you at the end of the day. That's how great Erica and Chidori are. They are the couple of the series, in my opinion. So I guess that's kind of wraps my thoughts on 8 days. So we now move on to Le Volume sa Aton. Oh boy. Oh boy. This one completely caught me off guard because it's absolutely not the volume I thought it was going to be. I did not expect a psychological dissection of two characters who'd largely been in the background or used for like lighthearted scenes or kind of just to help push the plot along a little bit. I had never expected what we got out of that. I didn't expect Rainbow Magic to become a song that will always without fail choke me up. I can't, like, there were a couple of times I had to actually turn the volume down on my speakers while I was playing when that song would come on, because like mid-scene somewhere, and I would have to just no, I can't hear that. You're trying to snipe me in the middle of my own video series. I'm not gonna cry on camera. And it happens sometimes. You get what can you do? But I also didn't expect to feel so personally called out by this game at so many points. Like, I came into this series wanting to relate to Erica because I'm snarky and I keep people at a distance in the same way. But then by the end of this game, it's like, oh no, actually I'm Yuzuriha, and that kind of hurts in a way. Not in a bad way, because I don't think Yuzuriha is not a bad character at all. She is fan-freaking-tastic. She probably is like my favorite character in the end, just because there's just so much there that's relatable. I did not expect her to be such a deep, complex character, and I also didn't expect to see her relationship with Ringo being something that I would really just like latch onto, like in this way that just like I'm glad that she got Narine in the end, but God, I just loved how good she and Ringo were for each other. Like I said it a lot in the Let's Play, and I think that their relationship was very important because they're two people who were able to kind of see past the masks, and they each kind of just wanted someone or anyone to be able to do that. And I think that their little autumn relationship is something, I like to think that it's something that both of them will kind of always kind of keep tucked away as like a special little thing for the both of them, despite the fact that it came with a lot of things that were very tertiary and awful that happened around it. This was not a fun, fantastic, rainbow magic type time of Yuzuriha's life. It was tumultuous as hell, but I think that her relationship with Ringo, and I think Ringo's relationship with her in terms of how it also kind of made her fall out with her own sister for a bit, I think that even though that relationship is kind of colored a bit with that darkness, I think both of them kind of have to take something special away from that, because I think that it allowed them both to start moving forward. And again, that's like a big thing in this series, I think, is doing a thing that you need to do to move forward, or finding a key that helps you kind of come to an understanding and realize like why you are doing what you're doing, or what you need to do at all. So let's see here. Yuzuriha was obviously sort of like the front and center focus of this volume, but also I was very, very shocked at what we got with Narine. Narine had been such a hard character to read through the first two volumes. You never really understood, like, I never understood why she was there. I thought that maybe she was going to end up being kind of like the one character in the series that kind of gets underwritten because we have too many characters and we just can't give something to everybody. She's a character that I could also feel like some sadness coming off of, but I couldn't pinpoint it. And then we learn about her past and like how her entire arc is being one of just like this awful self-punishment and atonement and like what her finally accepting Yuzu's love means. It means more, you know, than the two of them having a relationship. It's something much bigger, and the story carries that moment with an unbelievable amount of gravitas. Like it's a moment where, you know, two people kind of feel finally free. It's man. That fake out ending though. They start rolling them credits and Narine hadn't showed up. I was so, oh my god, I was so gutted, dude. Oh my god, my poor little plushy heart was just done, man. I couldn't. And then you get the post credits where they like, yeah, like we're doing this. We're off. We're eloping. Let's get out of here. God. That was so good. The Ringo ending similarly was amazing. I really loved what, like, I think, I don't feel that, like, that was a bad ending. I think that that was, like, a suitable, you know, like, what I feel would maybe really happen in that situation where like, the person is maybe kind of really too devoted to, you know, their religion, or maybe they are unable to kind of forgive themselves and let themselves feel worthy of that love. So, you know, she ends up moving on with somebody else, and it's believable. It feels nice. Like it was nice for them to kind of have that moment, and I'm glad we had it. Wasn't a big fan of the twins ending. I don't. It felt like a regression to me. It feels like these like these two characters were, you know, starting to understand that they needed to kind of separate a little bit. They need that difference. You know, like Ringo has to be Ringo, Ichigo has to be Ichigo, and I think that I said it a, you know, I said as much when we got that ending in the playthrough, is that I just didn't like the twins ending at all. It felt like that felt like a truly bad ending, and it's not just because, oh, I'm not into incest. I mean, I'm not into incest, but it just felt like it was an ending that betrayed the characters, and I just didn't like it. But I think the highlight though is Yuzuriha being written the way she was. She feels written so carefully. If every character I feel had dialogue and inner monologues, like I feel like every word they put on the screen for Yuzuriha was so painstakingly deliberate. And they just, like, the amount of pain that this girl is in is almost suffocating. Like there were times I really kind of like had to put this one down for a couple hours and just be like, okay, this was a bit much. Her inner monologues can be so painful at times. And like her bigger problems, you know, are obviously the focus, but it's like the little day-to-day things that tore her heart the most. And I think that those are the things that a lot of people can really like relate to and connect to. And by the end of this story, we've got these two characters who have a lot of things that they needed to work on, and I like that at the end of this story, it's not them just fixing those things. It's them at the start of their journey toward finally finding like that inner honesty and living it with one another. I think their ending is a good setup for what the end of the entire series is doing. They do a very good job of making sure that they're carrying that theme through, or that like when they set up, or they set up their big themes very well by signposting them with something else before. And I think that like what the true ending here does with Yuzu and Neri, I think what they're doing here is very much setting up what they're going to do and what the final volume's themes are going to be as it kind of sums up the rest of the series. Let's see. Any final thoughts on Oton while we're here? I think that I did kind of voice these thoughts a little bit, and I know that it's actually come up in the Flowers Discord too, but Yuzuriha is not a trans character, and I'm not trying to say she is. That's not, like, I'm not going to be the one to try and headcanon that into existence or anything. That's just, while she's not a trans character herself, I feel like a lot of trans people could probably see themselves in her ordeals or the pain she experiences with sort of the daily microaggressions of things that can just really hurt that people say and do. It's like unintentional cruelties, right? Things that people say, and like you come to like it all comes down to everybody kind of, you know, like, oh, you're the great prince and all of that stuff, and you know, all of those things kind of cut in the same way that I think that can be related to the trans experience. And I think that it's also similar to how when we look at how she describes the mask she wears, it's also a very similar thing of, like, you know, hiding who you are, but it's in reverse here. And I think that's such an interesting read. And again, I think that, like, despite the fact that she's not a trans character, I think that it's something interesting that really comes across in a way that I wasn't expecting. And I was glad that I wasn't the only one that kind of saw that. I don't know if it was intentional or not, or if there's any kind of nod to that, but I thought it was very cool that the way you could tie her story and the way that she kind of feels about herself and the way other people and how she lets herself be viewed by other people and how other people's views of her affect her. I think all of that is really interesting to kind of look at. And I feel like this is probably my favorite volume of the series. Like, it's gonna always probably be between Ete and Oton in terms of, like, what my favorite is going to be. But again, like I said, the next tier is literally the other two games when they're literally 1 pixel below. But I think it's just, I kind of got to give the nod to Oton because there's just a lot. Like, there's so much feeling here. There's so much, and it's all executed very, very well. Like, the psychological analysis going on here is just was completely unexpected. It took me completely by surprise seeing her story be told like this, and Yuzuriha and Nerine end up being the characters they are, and I just don't think they could have handled it any better. Just absolutely fantastic, top to bottom. Okay, so running through the old brain bucket here. I don't know that I got any more thoughts. I know I got a lot of thoughts for this, though. Oh boy, here we go. Moving on to the mammoth. The mammoth. The mammoth. I got a feeling this is going to be the biggest segment of the video. We're moving on to Le Volume Hiver. Oh, this series has spent a lot of time writing checks that it was always gonna fall on Yver's shoulders to cash. This volume has to do so much in 6 chapters that all seem to just fly by. Like the first 4 chapters of this game feel like they just blow on by. The pacing is just phenomenal here. This game hits the ground running. And I think that in the end, it does a very respectable job of handling pretty much most of everything that it does. I think like I mentioned it in the earlier segment, but I think the visual novel bullshit is at its highest in this volume, just because of how you have to get the grand finale. I don't know how anybody's ever supposed to guess that that's what you're supposed to do. To get the grand finale, to finally see the actual end to the series. As for maybe a couple other things I'm not a big fan of, I think that this game also does kind of fall back into the first volume's nasty habit of writing characters in ways that feel out of character to facilitate certain plot lines. Suo really got hung up on that epitaphs meaning and thinking that it was anyway written about an adult. And that just felt so forced, because that whole time I felt like she would have been smart enough to understand that those were words very clearly written by a child who had died at an early age. And I don't know how they stuck to this for like three or four chapters. And that's just so long to go on with that charade. I also really felt like they intentionally kept the Sasaki sisters away from the main story, especially when everything had blown up to be as big as it is. Also, that they could facilitate the moment, you know, where they're just like, well, what if it's just, you know, we're just literally looking for a key. It made no sense for them to not be involved with how crazy the situation had gotten when we realized that, like, you know, Yuzuriha and Nerine are on campus. Erika got hurt by one of them. Like, it's just wild. And they had so many opportunities to do it. Like, they had a whole damn ghost story thing. Like, they were together so many times, and they didn't finally pull them in until it was just like, I don't know, we waited long enough. Like, it really felt that, like, that is the one time in the entire series I felt like they were stretching for time. Even if you were trying to, like, put it in the context of the Sasaki's relationship with Yuzuriha from the fall, I still think that the situation had gotten so big at this point, they needed to be there. And I feel like the writing was just kind of contrived in a way to keep them away so we can stretch it out a bit. I guess the only other thing that does kind of bother me is Sayori Kafune's skeletal remains being in the secret library room. That feels odd. I'm not as butt mad about it as I am the Sasaki's and the Suo stuff. I don't know why. I feel like this should really bother me more than it does, because it is kind of wild. You know, it was a hard pill to swallow that a child dying at a prestigious boarding school wouldn't be like a big deal, or somebody wouldn't come looking, unless the Basquiats are like deeper entrenched in things like local and state legal affairs than it's ever let on. Let alone, like, how does that get covered up? Like, how do you hide a body decaying? How long does that take? Like, why didn't you just, like, bury her somewhere? Specifically because, you know, like, they had to have known by this point that she was kind of having some kind of relationship thing with Shion Basquiat, I have to imagine. Like, somebody had to have figured that out at some point. And again, for some dumb reason, this just does not bother me quite as much. Like, for some reason, my brain is okay letting this one go. I don't know why. But it is what it is. Also, I was drinking a I was drinking a carbonated beverage there, and I just belched, but I'm just gonna leave it in. Who cares? Again, we're doing it live. I don't need to edit anything. I am the dark side Phil of visual novel reading and analysis. All right. Let's see what everything else. What else do we got? I mean, okay, of course. Duh. Like the Mayuri situation. I can maybe see some people being a little not happy with how the Mayuri situation played out. I'm sure there's probably a good deal of people out there that, like, looked at her decision to leave and probably felt really frustrated that that's what it came down to, that she just really wanted, that, like, this is what she wanted to do. But I think more than anything, again, if we go back to Rika's behavior and the twins' behavior in the spring, this is a series about understanding. And Mayuri is, of course, as we continue to have to point out, Mayuri is a child who was faced with a choice that was just so much bigger than her. And she chose the option that she felt might heal the most painful hole in her heart in that moment. You can always say, like, she could have handled it better, and you're probably right. But again, she's a kid, and there's no manual for how big feelings like this work, especially the ones that she's grappling with. Like, in the end, like, it was the right decision for her. And another lesson this series is really good at hitting home is that, like, the right decision may not be what's best for everyone. And like, I completely get it. And while we're on Mayuri, as someone who started one place and ended up at the start of something else, like the rest of the cast all really kind of blossoms over the course of the series, and this final volume is like really good at kind of showing that. It's really like, I think that like highlighting Mayuri's decision is kind of like their way of exemplifying how everybody else has grown. So I guess to start with Suo, like Suo is still like an easy to fluster disaster girl that she was in the spring. But she has a bit more forcefulness to her now, and the resolve, and she went out there and she did what she needed to do. She became a stronger person. She became a vocal person. She became the president of the Council of Nikaya. That is not an easy feat. Like, she's got a little bit of her own swagger now, which is unbelievable when we consider where she started in the spring. You can feel, like, her narration feels different. It feels determined and earned. She's less likely to give in to her negative thoughts, despite the fact that, like, her own self-doubt in the form of her stepmother's ghost still is there prying at her. She is so much more able to pry herself out of it. And whether it's admirable or not, she's taking on all of this stuff by herself for so long. She's unbelievably strong at this point. But the thing is that we also see her blinded by selfishness. And the way that culminates in the Mayuri ending kind of really drives home something she needed to open her eyes to. Like, the Mayuri ending I can see being just, like, it made everybody mad. I bet everybody that got that Mayuri ending was pretty butt mad the first time, because that ending is so unsatisfying. But it's unsatisfying because I think that we as the reader and Suo as a character have both failed to understand that, like, she wasn't really doing all of this for Mayuri's sake, was she? Was she really listening to what Mayuri said? And again, I know that that ending is absolutely frustrating, but it is needed to really drive home what the narrative's trying to show you with Suo's single-minded approach to her investigation. So again, she just kind of ends up as one of the best protagonists, like, ever. I think she's fantastic. Rika, what an absolute turnaround. What? Yeah, again, like, I would not expect to be here. Like, if we were just now finishing the spring volume, I would not be here. But what an absolute rock. It's very easy to come out that first game feeling a certain way about her, or in my words, you know, like, how do you redeem her? And I think that's the thing that I learned throughout the series, is that it's never that she needed to be redeemed. She needed to be understood, and everybody gave her that, and she in turn gave all of herself to everyone else. There are moments in this volume, like, especially where you can tell that doing that hurts like hell, because she's clearly not over her feelings for Suo, and Suo is just way more touchy-feely in this volume, like, than ever before. I'm convinced that everyone has benefited from having Rika in their corner, not just Suo. Like, we all need a Rika in our lives, like, for real. She may be the strongest character in the series. She is just an absolute rock. She is like, I mean, unless ghosts are involved, you can't much depend on her for that. Also, not before she's had her morning tea. Not gonna get much out of her. But I ended up really, really liking her as a character. And I think in, like, the last two volumes especially, where she is just giving all of herself. She's just such an admirable person. For everything that she's had to endure, to end up the way she is, and the way that, you know, she's going to carry that forward is really awesome. And of course, our girl, Erika. Erika is a character who starts out, it's just so standoffish. She just tries so hard to be the edgelord. And over the course of the series, she softens like so steadily over all 4 games that by the last game, she's just so incredibly bad at hiding her intentions to help those she cares about. Like, nobody's even remotely ruffled by her anymore. Like she barely gets under anybody's skin, and everybody I loved the joke that everybody's just got an Erika impression now. Like, that's really good. To kind of give an idea of how everybody kind of sees her now. But I think that softening of her personality, while it led her to her relationship with Chidori, obviously, I feel that her learning to let more people into her world and be more vulnerable is what allowed her to be the one person who could touch Dahlia's heart in the end. I feel like she probably felt like she'd never be able to repay Dahlia for her kindness when she arrived at the academy, for taking care of her, for just being patient. Even when she was just like apparently really horrible to her, Dahlia just took it. And I don't think that Erika knew how to deal with that. It's the same with the Suo. You find out that Suo was the first person she ever fell in love with, and it's because Suo never really rose to her, like, her kind of being a jerk. She just kind of, like, she never saw it as a thing to change. She just saw it as, well, this is who I'm dealing with, and that's fine. And I think that's sort of like, again, why she also kind of fell in love with Dahlia, because, you know, Dahlia just kind of accepted it. It's just like, this is you. Like, I can deal with this. But again, I feel like that's something that she never felt that she could ever pay back. But in that moment, in the end, when they're trying to get her to just like, look, just tell us what's going on here. Like, what's all of this mother elder stuff? Like, what is up with your family? Like, why are you holding all of this back? Nobody but Erika could be the person to have gotten her to talk, or to give her that moment of finally being able to let go. Like, I think it really brings home the lesson of a burden shared is a burden halved. And in that moment, nobody was more qualified to take some of that load and be trusted with it than Erika Yagaki. And that is one of the most powerful moments in the series for me. Like, when that line, you know, and she begs her to not take the Dahlia Basquiat away from her that she's come to love. It just, oh God, that just gutted me like a fish, dude. Oh, all of my insides hurted. I think maybe nobody changed more outwardly than Chidori. Like, again, we've already kind of talked about the softening that her character experienced, mostly through Ate, but starting with Ate, again, you could sort of hear her voice actress actually adding small bits of sweetness to Chidori's performance over the course of the last 2 games. She goes from, like, snippy and insensitive to actively involved and concerned, and she in no way hides how much she loves Erika at all. She is so outwardly in love and will tell anyone who listens. It's honestly just very sweet. She ends up with an amazingly balanced personality that never sees her, like, lose her very straightforward and earnest nature that she has when you meet her, and she's still capable of pulling out the claws, as we saw when she's ready to powerbomb Suo through a desk. When Erika gets thrown out of her wheelchair. The Sasaki sisters, again, I feel like they make an initial impression in the first game that they're gonna be the comedy relief characters. It's what I expected of them. Like, you got the hyper one and you got the sleepy one. There's the joke. And of course, they end up being pretty deep. For the first 2 games, they're largely there to keep up the group's morale. But when autumn hits and feelings for Yuzuriha kind of tear through their world like a tornado, they're really faced with having to look at themselves as individual people for what feels like the first time. I was really, really pulled into Ringo's monologues. Like, Ringo's monologues really bring home just how desperately she needed to be seen. And in this final volume, I think that the progress we see from them is that they're starting to kind of like hang around each other a little less. They're a little less clingy. They're doing more of their own things. They're kind of showing more of their own strengths this time around. You know, they're twins, so obviously they're always going to be close. They're always going to want that. But by the end of the series, they're starting to come into their own, which is why I really didn't like the sisters ending in Autumn at all. Again, that was just a complete rejection of progress. It felt like. And I guess Yuzuriha and Nerire. I think I kind of got to the points I wanted to make about them in the fall section, but again, like they are at the start of a journey, and it's one that's separate from everybody else, which is kind of a bummer, but this is just the way they have to do things. Like they need to, like for whatever reason, they need to be anywhere but here. They can no longer grow here. They have gotten everything they can from being here. Whatever it is they need to grow as into the people that they've started to be, it's not at San Ingracum. And life is all about meetings and partings, and these are two characters that have a history that make their relationship a lot different from the ones that we see begin and grow over the last year. Like their relationship is already somewhere kind of a bit farther than where everybody else is. Like they've kind of already grown and matured in that environment, and where they need to continue growing is somewhere else. Wherever that is, who knows? So obviously they're gonna go elope somewhere and gonna live a happy life. I choose to think they're gonna live a happy life. Yeah. So I guess that's kind of all of it. I guess that's... Good God, I've been talking for an hour? I don't know that I've ever actually just sat here and talked to myself for an hour without there being a reason to do so, without there being something here, like a game or something. What am I doing? Anyway, I don't know that I have anything left to say about Yvette, so I guess that's kind of... Wow, our model just freaking out. I guess that's kind of gonna start to wrap things up. I mean, at the end of the story, everyone, again, like I've mentioned it before, but everybody's kind of at the start of their journey. The year that kind of leads up to where this series ends is a period of attaining the strength and like establishing those bonds and nourishing those friendships, and these are all these things that these girls need to grow as you know, as the title of the game would kind of just blatantly point out, flowers. I think that like it's obviously a very I'm honestly kind of mad at how apt the title Flowers is. But I'm trying to think if there's anything else I've left on the table here. I'm sure there is, because again, this is a series that is so densely layered that I'd never have time to put it all together in one video. But I hope that the one video that I have put together here is somehow enough to get across just how much this story ended up meaning to me, and how nice it was to be able to share it with all of you. With all of my friends over at the Flowers Discord. I'm sure there's a lot more I could have gone over, but I feel like I've kind of sat here and I have droned on far too long already, and surely you're either still gathering your own thoughts or you've already got them and you want to share them or whatever. I'd be more than happy to hear them if you want to drop them in the comments or something. And again, if you're on the Flowers Discord, feel free to ping me and tell me I'm wrong about everything. That'd be great. Literally nobody's ever done that, and that's one of the best things about having been a part of that community, is literally nobody's taken my thoughts on anything and have said, no, that's absolutely wrong, here's what it actually is. And people are generally pretty open and receptive to everybody else's reads on things, and that's been pretty fun. Wow, I guess this is it. I guess this is where our Flowers journey finally comes to an end. If you were here for one volume, or if you were here for all of them, or if you're just here because you saw somebody posted some final thoughts on the series and wanted to check that out. Whatever it was you chose to do, I'm happy that you chose to spend some of that time with me. Lord knows who's got free time anymore these days, right? So the fact that you're choosing to spend it with a dummy like me blabbering over a visual novel that I read for 80 hours. The fact that you spend a little bit of that time with me, that's pretty awesome. So thank you as always for stopping by. I hope you have a nice rest of your whatever, wherever you are. And thank you for joining me for Flowers. We'll catch you hopefully somewhere down the road, wherever our journeys take us. You have a good one.